Okay, today part of the designing process is for you to take magazine pages and just kind of flip through the imagery and look at lines of objects that might interest you. We're going to create an abstract design, and so we're going to minimize what we view through this viewfinder. The lines and shapes and shadows, highlights, those abstracted parts of the image, we will end up sketching on a small square. So if you look at this, we know it's a watch. If you look at this object, you won't be using a clear transparency sheet, but I'm going to kind of trace over the edges or lines that I see through this viewfinder that I might focus on in my design. So I would come through, maybe first actually trace the square. And then looking at these edges, these shapes of the shadows and highlights, I would come through and just pulling out the lines that kind of interest me, that create this shape. I might actually like the dots that I see here, but I may just create this as a line, visual line. When I move this away and I put it against just white paper, you can see the abstract pattern or shape. Okay, it really isn't part of the image. What you're going to then do is you're going to draw the lines that you see, you're going to draw them on your white square. You're trying to draw what you see on this white square just from looking through the viewfinder. If I turn to another page and use this magazine and the viewfinder again, you can see that I might like the way these black spaces or the green kind of fits in them, looking at like shapes and line and edges. Moving this around, I like the fact that it's not really symmetrical, and to me that's a little bit more visually interesting. So that's why we're using the viewfinder, to kind of pick out the shapes that you like in the design. So moving this over here, I could then look at almost the way we use the grid system and then just go ahead and start sketching with pencil, thinking about those little boxes. You can see the lines along the edge, and then just start sketching the placement or the shape of what I see here. I may have another line here because of this highlight. And now I have an abstracted design to start with. It's pretty faint. So you can see that this is really what I'm looking for. I will now take this and I would place this onto my worksheet or design sheet and decide, do I want this to be here? I like to have a little bit of negative space. Some students start right on the edge. I guess that's your choice, but you may decide you want it at an angle. You might want it up here. I probably wouldn't put it right in the center, but sometimes a little off center is a little bit more visually interesting. You could angle it. I mean, you could change it from the perspective that you just drew it from. Say maybe you like that. Once you decide where you want to position this, then you will tape this down. And once it's taped down, then you're going to start to work on expanding with your lines. Maybe I want to go from something more geometric to something that's a little bit more freestyle or freeform. Maybe I want to carry this over and then have this come up just because I feel like sketching it that way. You have to decide what you're most comfortable with. So I may come down here and then maybe I actually end up blocking this together, almost like these visually connect, but it goes underneath. So you are creating your own design. It doesn't mean that I can't add a little section here and then maybe a section here. So just think about how your design may flow from your piece. And if you sketch lightly, then it can just grow however you see your piece expanding. And you're going to go ahead and continue to develop this. Once you have some bigger spaces, then you're going to decide if you want, where you want patterns. You're going to fill the space with patterns. Maybe I want some lines. Maybe I want some shapes. So you decide what you really want to put in your picture. The patterns come later, and you may want to use some similar, you may want to repeat some things. So really it's your imagination that leads the way. But you're starting from your generic basic shape and lines and space that you have pulled from a photograph or some kind of graphic design, from a magazine, from an art book. With the magazines, you can actually draw on the pages and you can tear the page out, but you can't do that with a book. So that's one of the reasons we're using magazines.